one of the folks I had on here recently believes that the Septuagint, it was originally written in Greek and that it was translated into Hebrew. And the reason he said that is because, and I'll try to elucidate this argument the best I possibly can, and you can basically deconstruct it and give me what you think, is that ancient Greek is a language that had over 1 million unique words. Ancient Hebrew is a language that had maybe 7,000 at best unique words. And he made the argument that you cannot translate from something less technical, Hebrew, to something way more technical, ancient Greek. He says you translate down, you don't translate up, right? So you don't like, if I was to, the analogy I think of that I try to explain when I talk about this is like, you find a flying saucer in the desert and you want to like reverse engineer it and make your own flying saucer. When you try to reverse engineer that flying saucer, you're not going to make something better than that flying saucer. It's going to be something not as good, right? So that was his main argument with the translation of the Septuagint, meaning like that's why he thought it was an original Greek, and then it was translated into Hebrew after. And but the argument of this is that the Greek that we read in the New Testament or the Old Testament is like Koine Greek. It's like a very unsophisticated Greek compared to like Homer and some of the ancient stuff.
Yeah, well, it's not a very good argument. I don't know who this is, but I mean, it's a very bad argument. You frequently have translations go both ways, translated up, translated down. It's just an empirical fact. English is a much more complicated language than many works that are translated into English, and the Bible gets translated into many languages that are much more simple than Greek. So it goes both ways, and it always goes both ways. Moreover, how does he know there are 7,000 unique words in Hebrew? He's basing that on the fact that we've got these texts that have 7,000 unique words. Okay, these are the only texts we have. People spoke Hebrew. We have no idea what their vocabulary was. For him to say that it had to be only these 7,000 words is a little bit crazy. That's like saying if you get a copy of Time magazine or something, or it's not even printed anymore, but you get Time magazine and you say, this is the extent of the English vocabulary. Like in 3,000 years, somebody finds a Time magazine and they categorize all the words, say, okay, those are the only words in English. And so it could not have been translated into a language that has more words because it doesn't work that way. How do you know how many words?
Sure, but just going off evidence, right? We have evidence.
What's his evidence?
Sorry?
What's his evidence?
I'm saying just going off evidence of word counts, unique word counts for those languages today. We only have 7,000 unique words for ancient Greek. We have over 1 million. We only have 7,000 for ancient Hebrew, and we have 1 million for ancient Greek.
That's right. That's what we have today.
Those are estimates, right? Those are samples, maybe.
No, they're not estimates. He's basing this on account of what the Hebrew words we have. But when people translated the Hebrew into the Greek, they didn't have just those 7,000 words. This is 2,000 years ago.
Okay, but do you think that do you think the scale was similar though? Do you think so? Right now,
it doesn't matter how similar it is because it's not always that you take something more complicated and make it more simple, or that you take something more simple and make it more complicated. Okay. You can absolutely just show time after time after time where that is and how it happens. There are also very good reasons for thinking it did not go from Greek to Hebrew.
Okay, what would be a good example of something that went from of a translation that went from a language that was less complicated to something far more complex?
That went from something less complicated to more complex.
For example, Hebrew to Greek.
Coptic is a very simple language in many ways. You have Coptic. We have ancient Coptic texts. The grammar isn't as difficult. It gets translated into English all the time. English is a far more complicated language.
Okay. Interesting. So, and then my understanding of the Septuagint is, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Septuagint was allegedly written around between 300 and 400 BC?
No.
Okay, when was it?
We don't know. For one thing, it's not that early. But what we do know is that there wasn't a Septuagint. So when people talk about the Septuagint, they're using, when scholars say the Septuagint, they're using a shorthand. There were numerous translations of the Hebrew Bible into Greek that were floating around. And it'd be kind of like today if you go to some developing country and you have missionaries there who are trying to put parts of the New Testament into that language. Okay, so like you have these translators, these conservative missionaries who try, Wycliffe translators, they'll take the Bible and they put it into some language in Africa that hasn't ever been put into English before. So you do that so that the people in that language can read it.
Okay.
In the ancient world, after Alexander the Great, so after the 4th century, Jews are spread throughout what was then, at one point was kind of a Greek empire, but then became the empires around the Mediterranean. The educated people read Greek. They didn't read Hebrew.
Right.
They would read Hebrew in Israel, but not in other places. So in different places, the Bible is being translated into Greek. Eventually, there was one form of that Greek that came together, and that is what they're calling the Septuagint. But it's a mistake to think it was a one-time event.
Oh, interesting.
And it's people say that because there's a letter called the Letter of Aristeas, which is a Jewish writing that's trying to explain how it happened. And the way it explains it can't possibly be right. I mean, it describes it to this miracle. It says you had these 70 Jewish scholars who were brought together. They were all put in separate rooms. They were all given the assignment to translate it. They all translated it literally word for word the same.
Right.
Which is like, of course, that's crazy. But it does show that they were aware of the fact that it came out of the Hebrew into the Greek. And there, again, this is not, I know you don't like people saying there's not a disputed topic, but there's a reason this is not a disputed topic. I mean, because for one thing, I'll give you one piece of evidence. But I mean, a linguist would just tear that apart, that whole idea apart. One reason it would be torn up, I mean, like a serious linguist who knows both the Semitic languages and the Indo-European languages would tear it apart. Okay. And one of the reasons is because there are many instances where the Greek embodies what are called Semiticisms. The Greek of the Septuagint,
right,
and the Greek of the New Testament. Okay. A Semiticism is when you're taking a grammatical construction that doesn't work in the language that you're translating it into, or is not normally used in the language you're translating it into, but you keep the grammatical construction of the original language for the sake of authenticity or because you don't know quite how to. And so just as an example, if in Hebrew, if you want to say the Holy Spirit, okay, there's no way to say Holy Spirit in Hebrew. The phrase in Hebrew is the Spirit of holiness. The way you make an adjectival attribution in Hebrew is not by using an adjective, but by putting together two nouns and saying of. So the Spirit of holiness means the Holy Spirit, or the way of righteousness means the right way. Okay? So Greek speakers don't do that. They use adjectives. But when you get in biblical Greek, Septuagint and the New Testament, you have these Semiticisms. That shows these are not original Greek compositions. Okay. They're being translated from Hebrew with using Semitic forms.
Okay, interesting. But so the original Hebrew we don't have other than the Dead Sea Scrolls. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know what you mean by the original.
Like the original Hebrew. So it was translated into Greek from Hebrew, but that original Hebrew.
We have Hebrew manuscripts, yes.
We have the manuscripts. Okay.
But we don't have the original manuscripts.
We don't have the originals, but they're basically what I'm trying to say is like scholarship tries to date them to a certain spot, but we don't know actually when they are because we don't have them.
I'm not sure what the them is that you're referring to.
The manuscripts.
We don't have we don't have original manuscripts for any writing from the ancient world.
We don't have right. Okay, I see what you're saying.
We don't have the original writings for Euripides, or for Plato, or for Cicero, or for Seneca, or for the book of Isaiah, or for the Gospel of Matthew. We don't have the originals for any of those. The original manuscript. If you mean by that the author sits down and he writes.
Yes.
So I'm Mark and I'm writing my thing and I write my thing. And Mark. We don't have that thing he wrote.
Everything that we have is a copy or a rewriting.
Unless it's a personal letter, a correspondence. But in terms of literary texts, they're copies.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a big problem. For the Bible
no, I
and
can
for
imagine.
It's a huge problem.
Yeah.
That was what my PhD was, because the reason I was interested in analyzing Greek manuscripts is because with the New Testament, we have thousands of Greek manuscripts, but they all disagree with each other because they're all copies and the scribes made mistakes. Right. Or they change things on purpose. Right. So you got to figure out, well, what did the author say then? If you've got, suppose you've got 10 copies of Plato's Republic or something.
Okay.
And the 10 have they word certain lines differently. Certain sentences are worded differently among these 10 manuscripts. Well, okay, so you got that, but you want to figure out, well, what did Plato write? Mm-hmm. You got to figure it out. And there's a whole science to doing that.
Oh, wow, that's so interesting.